Hello, in this video we're going to talk about an amplitude and the periods of a sine and cosine function. In general, this function is called sinusoidal function. Sinusoidal function means the function that describes a smooth and continuous and periodic oscillation like sine and cosine wave that represent a predictable pattern. Those kind of function is called sinusoidal function. And the general form of a sinusoidal function is y equals to a times sine bx minus c plus d. And each letters represent something different, such as A is going to determine the amplitude of the function. B will tell you the period of a sine function, and the negative C or C is the shift, the horizontal shift, or called phase shift. D is the vertical moved, which is, we learned that from 141, which is pre-calculus 1, meaning that if you're going up and going down, in more general, it means the midnight. Where is the midnight is? For example, a very simple sine function, sine x, look like this one, right? And at the highest point is 1, and then here is 2 pi and pi, and we know that the general sine x function, the amplitude, is equal to 1. That means the oscillation is from 1 to negative 1. That means how far away that from the midnight. Where's the midnight? The midnight is here. The x-axis is the midnight of the function. So we have the midnight x-axis, which means it's y equals to 0. And then we also have the period. The period means how often the function repeats. It repeats every 2 pi, so the period is equal to 2 pi, and the phase, there's no shifting right now, so that's why the phase shift, it would be 0. So that's the simplest sine function, and similar to cosine. Amplitude is also equal to 1, the midnight is 0, the period is 2 pi, but the cosine starts on the top, which is this way. Cosine is more like that. And here is the pi. No, pi is in here. Here is 3 pi half. And then here it repeats. That gives you a pi. Oh no, 2 pi. Okay, I was wrong. This should be 1/2 pi. And this is pi. This is 3/2 pi. So every 2 pi, the cosine function will repeat. The cosine function starts on the top. Okay, now let's take a look. In this video, we're going to only talk about the letter A and B, which is the amplitude and the period. In the next video, we're going to talk about C and D. Now let's take a look. What's the difference between sine x versus sine 0.5x, and the sine 2 times x, and science maybe 4 times science 4 times sine x. Let's open our decimals. So in this decimals science calculator, we know that the base is sine x in the purple line. Now, let's take a look. If we times half, let's do half of sine x, what happened? Well, it looks like it gets flatter. It looks like it compressed it a little bit. Let's take a look what happens. In order to be more clear, this has become 0.5 maybe? 0.5. Okay, the black line represents the half of sine x. What happened to the highest point? Well, the highest point now is become 0.5 versus in the old function, the highest point is 1. So that means the amplitude become half. Now, let's look at sine 4 times sine x. Look at the red line. So the amplitude, which is a equals to 4 now, that means the highest point become 4 times of the original point. So that means the highest point, the y-coordinate is equals to 4. And we can also compare to sine 2 times sine x. So that means the amplitude will determine how far away the highest point from the midline. So that's the amplitude. So basically, amplitude is the greatest distance from the rest of the function represent the vertical stretch factor. So the absolute value of A is the amplitude. It gives you the distance, the furthest, the greatest distance, which is the maximum value from the midline. Okay, so now if we let in the sinusoidal function, if we let c equals to 0 and d also equals to 0, because right now we'll just discuss about a and b, in the general form of sine and the cosine function. So we got y equals to a times sine bx, and then y equals to a times cosine bx. We know that from the basic function, the function is look like this way. If the sine is starting from here, I'm just going to draw one period. It look like this one, whereas the cosine function starts as 1, starts from the up and go all the way back in here. Here is pi, this is 2 pi. That's cosine function and that's sine function. So the amplitude is the absolute value of A, which gives you the distance from this part. This is the amplitude A, or also the lowest point to the midline, since both sine function and the cosine function, if the c and d equals to 0, they should be reflected like a even half and half from the midline. So here also this distance, the lowest point to the midline, also equals to the amplitude A. So summarize, the amplitude is absolute value of A, which is the vertical height of the midline. And the amplitude A is equals to half of the maximum minus the minimum. For example, your maximum is 1, your minimum is -1. When you subtract them, the total distance from the maximum to the minimum is equal to 2, right? Half of it is equal to a. Basically, half of it is how far away the maximum to the midnight, or how far away the minimum to the midnight. Okay, so here's the examples. Now, I want you to graph a function fx equals to -4 sine x. B is equal to 1, and what does the function look like? So we know the original function. Let me draw out the original function. It's going to look like this way, right? In one period, in one phase. And if it's times 4, what happens is the amplitude is going to be stretched. So here is 1. If you times 4, your function is going to look like much taller. Go back down and lower, back to here. And the highest point here should be 4. Let me extend it. So this part should be 4, -4. But that's not done because they have a negative sign. So what happens if you have a negative sign in front of the whole function? So your function will flip over the x-axis. So that means your final function is going to look like this way. Where the highest point is going to be 4, lowest point is going to be -4. So that's our graph for -4 times sine x. Okay, that's amplitude. After the amplitude, now let's discuss about the period of a sinusoidal function. Okay, in general, B is related to the period, and the period is equals to 2 pi divided by absolute value of B. It has to be absolute value. For example, fx equals to cosine x. So in this basic sinusoidal function is, we got a equals to 1, right? Because 1 times cosine x still equals to cosine x. It's not 0. If you times 0, you will get a 0, because everything times 0 gives you a 0. So this should be 1. And the b, similarly, also equals 1. Now we don't talk about the amplitude. Now focus on the b period. So the period of a cosine function, p, is equal to 2 pi divided by absolute value of b, which is 2 pi. Our b is equal to 1. That means the period equals 1. And in fact, our cosine function look like what? This way, right? 1, -1. This is pi, and this is 2 pi. So that's our cosine function. And then they repeat, right? After they go up, they go back down again and go up. As long as you know how to draw the first period, then you will be able to just repeat the pattern, then you will get the whole function. Now we just focus on the first period. In here, our period is equal to 2 pi. Now, let's do another example. Example, if fx equals to cosine x over 2, so what will be the period of this function? Well, in this case, our b is equal to 1/2. So the period of fx is equal to 2 pi divided by absolute value of b, which is equal to 4 pi. So that means this function is going to repeat every 4 pi. What does it look like? It will look like this way. Originally, your function is look like this way, right? 2 pi. And then this is your pi. But now with the same amplitude, because the amplitude didn't change, but your period is going to become 4 pi. So that means here is 3 pi, 4 pi. What happened to your function is you should have the same amplitude, which is in here, but your function is going to become expand to 4 pi, like that. Does it make sense? Or I can show you on a decimal. Let's see. On the decimal, y equals to cosine x. And then, oops, there's no x. And then if we have y equals to cosine half x, look at the function. The purple one is the one that expand, become 2 period. Look at the function. And then I can fix that. The step become pi. See? At beginning, it's supposed to be repeat every 2 pi, but right now, after you times half from the b, you repeat every 4 pi. Now the function is from here to here. Look at the purple one. Let me close the blue one. So it got expanded, it got stretched horizontally. All right, let's continue. Let's have another example. If I give you an x-axis, h of x, and then is cosine pi times x. So what's the period of this function? So in here, b is equal to pi. Remember that pi is a constant, which is equal to 3.14. It's not a variable like s, y, z is a constant, have a specific number. And our period is equal to 2 pi divided by b, absolute value of b, which is divided by pi, which is 2. So that means our cosine function is going to repeat at 2. So our cosine function look like this one at here. Make sense? And then you repeat. And here will become 4. Every time they got 1 period. So this part is 1 period, and then you have another period in here from 2 to 4, and then you repeat. Okay, let's get another example. Last example. What if I gave you a g of x equals to sine pi over 6 times x. So our b in this case is equals to pi over 6. Then the period is equals to 2 pi over our absolute value of b, which is 0 pi over 6, which is 12. So that means you're going to repeat every 12 distance. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the midline. In general, the midline is a horizontal line, right? So it should be y equals to d, such as y equals to sine x. So in this case, d is equal to 0. So that means the midline, which is the basic sine function, the midline is going to be the x-axis, which is y equals to 0. Or if I have y equals to sine x plus 2, then the midline is equal to y equals to 2. It moves up. So now a fx function is equal to 1/2 cosine 2x plus 1/2. So what does each of these numbers represent? First of all, this is our a. A means the amplitude. And the first two is help us to locate, to find the period. And the last one is the midline, which means the whole function shift up 1/2. So that means the midline from the horizontal axis, which is x-axis, going to move up. this is the midline equals to 1/2. So with this information, we should be able to graph this function, but we will discuss more about that in the next video.